December 1776. The wind cuts through the fabric of tattered coats like a knife. The ground is frozen hard, unforgiving to men who have marched hundreds of miles, many without boots, leaving trails of blood in the snow. This is not the image of a conquering legion. This is the Continental Army. They are starving, they are sick, and they are beaten. To understand the sheer magnitude of the gamble George Washington took on Christmas night, we must first understand just how close the American experiment was to total collapse. History books often gloss over the terror of this moment, jumping from the signing of the Declaration of Independence straight to victory. But the reality was grim. 5 months earlier, the colonies had declared their independence with soaring rhetoric. But rhetoric does not stop bayonets. Since the summer, the British war machine, the finest military force on earth, had systematically dismantled Washington's defenses. They had pushed the Americans out of Long Island, chased them off the island of Manhattan, and hounded them across the flatlands of New Jersey. By December, Washington had barely 3,000 men fit for duty. And the clock was ticking. The vast majority of these soldiers had enlistment contracts that expired on December 31st. In less than a week, Washington would not have an army. He would have a collection of farmers walking home to their families. The general wrote to his brother, "I think the game is pretty near up." It is in this crucible of despair that Washington makes a decision that defines his legacy. He cannot retreat further. There is nowhere left to go. He cannot wait for spring. There will be no army in the spring. He has to attack. And he has to do it now against a superior force, in the middle of a nor'easter that is hammering the coast with snow and sleet. The target is Trenton, New Jersey. The town is held by the Hessians, German mercenaries hired by the British Crown. These are professional soldiers, feared for their discipline and brutality. They are confident, secure in their warm quarters, believing the war is all but won. They call Washington the old fox, but they believe the fox is cornered. Washington's plan is complex, perhaps too complex for a ragged army to execute. It involves a three-pronged, coordinated attack across the Delaware River. He plans to surround the Hessians and cut off their retreat. But as Christmas night falls, the plan begins to unravel immediately. The weather turns violent. A howling storm descends, turning the river into a churning nightmare of black water and massive, jagged blocks of ice. 2 of the 3 American divisions fail to cross. They look at the river, look at the ice, and deem it impossible. Washington is left alone with the main body of the army, about 2,400 men. He stands on the Pennsylvania bank watching the Durham boats, large, black, flat-bottomed cargo vessels, being loaded with men, horses, and 18 pieces of heavy artillery. The operation is hours behind schedule. It is supposed to be a secret night march, but the loading takes too long. The shouting of orders is whipped away by the wind. The men are soaked to the bone before they even step into the boats. The heroes of this night are the men of the Marblehead Regiment, commanded by John Glover. These are fishermen from Massachusetts, men who know the sea, men who know how to handle a boat in a gale. Without them, the revolution ends right here on the banks of the Delaware. They pole and row the heavy boats through the ice floes, ferrying the artillery across the dark water, trip after freezing trip. It is 4:00 a.m. before the army is fully across. They are 9 miles from Trenton. The plan relied on striking before dawn. That is now impossible. They will be marching in daylight, exposed. Washington considers calling it off. If he is caught on the road, his army will be massacred. But he knows retreat is also a death sentence. He turns to his officers and gives the order to march. The password for the night is victory or death. It is not a poetic flourish. It is a literal description of the stakes. The march to Trenton is a horror story in itself. The storm intensifies, driving sleet into the faces of the men. The muskets, the primary weapon of the infantry, are getting wet. In the 18th century, a wet musket is a club. One officer sends word to Washington. "General, the muskets are wet and cannot fire." Washington's reply is cold and iron-hard. "Tell General Sullivan to use the bayonet." "I am resolved to take Trenton." As they march, two men freeze to death on the side of the road. They simply sit down to rest and never get up. Inside Trenton, the Hessian commander, Colonel Johann Rall, is not the drunkard that popular myth later painted him to be. He is a brave, experienced officer. But he is arrogant. He despises the American country clowns. He has neglected to build defensive earthworks, believing his men can repel any attack in the open. There were warnings. Spies and loyalists had tried to warn Rall that the Americans were moving. On Christmas night, Rall was playing cards at a local home. A loyalist farmer knocked on the door with a note containing urgent intelligence that Washington was coming. Rall, annoyed at the interruption, stuffed the note into his pocket without reading it. It would be found there, unopened, after his death. It is 8:00 a.m. on December 26th. The Americans are late, but the storm has provided cover. The snow masks the sound of thousands of marching feet. The Hessians' outer guards spot the Americans emerging from the white mist. They fire their muskets and retreat, shouting, "The enemy." The enemy, Washington, rides near the front. He is a massive target on his horse, but he seems possessed by a calm fury. He orders the deployment of the artillery. This is the decisive moment. Henry Knox, the former bookseller from Boston, sets up his cannons at the head of the two main streets of Trenton. Usually, artillery takes time to set up. But the Americans move with the speed of desperation. Within moments, grapeshot is tearing down the streets. The Hessians try to form their ranks, the disciplined lines they are famous for, but the American cannons blast them apart before they can organize. It is chaos. The wet muskets of the Hessians misfire. The Americans, following Washington's orders, charge with bayonets. They rush into the houses, firing from windows, fighting hand-to-hand in the alleyways. Colonel Rall tries to rally his men. He mounts his horse, shouting orders, trying to counterattack. But the American artillery dominates the field. Two bullets strike Rall in the side. He falls from his horse, mortally wounded. Leaderless and surrounded, trapped against the Assunpink Creek which Washington had wisely blocked, the Hessian resistance collapses. They lower their colors. They ground their arms. The battle has lasted less than an hour. The silence that follows the gunfire is surreal. The Americans, these ragged, starving men, look at each other in disbelief. They have captured nearly 900 Hessian soldiers. They have seized muskets, ammunition, and worst of all for the British, they have seized the narrative. The casualties tell the story of the tactical surprise. The Hessians suffered 22 killed and 83 severely wounded. The Americans, 2 men died during the march from the cold. In the battle itself, not a single American was killed by enemy fire. 5 were wounded, including a young lieutenant named James Monroe, who would survive a severed artery to eventually become the 5th President of the United States. Washington does not linger. He knows the main British army is nearby. He loads his prisoners and captured supplies back across the river. They have to cross the ice-choked Delaware again, this time exhausted and burdened with prisoners. But the mood has changed. The despair is gone. News of the victory spreads like wildfire through the colonies. It seems impossible. The old fox has bitten back. The psychological impact is immediate. The soldiers whose enlistments were ending on December 31st. Washington offers them a bounty of $10, hard coin, to stay just 6 more weeks. Many, inspired by the victory, agree to stay. This gamble, this desperate throw of the dice in the freezing dark, did not win the war. The war would drag on for years. But it prevented the war from ending. It proved that the Continental Army could fight. It proved that the British were not invincible. And it proved that George Washington was the leader the nation needed. As we look back at the crossing of the Delaware, we must strip away the sanitized paintings of men posing heroically in boats. We must remember the bleeding feet, the sleet, the terror of the dark water, and the crushing weight of responsibility on one man's shoulders. It was the moment when the American Revolution stood on the precipice of oblivion, looked down, and decided to march forward instead. It was the Christmas gift that bought a nation its future. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the tactics and desperation of 1776, please like and subscribe for more hidden history.